It has been one of the most anticipated books of 2021, and now Beyond Order by Jordan B. Peterson is finally available. But is it actually as good as his previous book 12 Rules for Life, or is Beyond Order a disappointment and you should skip it? In this video, I'm gonna give you the answer. Let's get started. Jordan B. Peterson has millions of fans all around the globe. For a while it was almost impossible to avoid him in the media, and his previous book 12 Rules for Life has been at the top of bestseller lists for years now. So it is needless to say that his follow-up book Beyond Order 12 More Rules for Life has been highly anticipated. And we will get into whether or not it has been worth the wait in just a second. But first I want to take a moment to appreciate the fact that we actually get to read this book. Because for a while it was very uncertain if the book would ever get published and if Jordan B. Peterson would live to see that day. He has been out of the limelight for more than a year now, and the reason for that is that he was battling an addiction to benzodiazepines. He got hooked on them without even noticing at first, and then had to go through severe withdrawals when trying to kick them. So the fact that he went through hell and back in those last 2 years and still managed to publish this book is truly mind-boggling. But without further ado, let's have a look at the content. The topics of this book haven't changed much from its predecessor, and honestly I would say that's a good thing. People who are interested in Jordan Peterson listen to him for very specific topics and very specific reasons, and if you're interested in the topics that he usually covers, then this book will not disappoint you. With the very first rule of the book, do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievements, he is picking up right where he left off with the previous book. In that chapter he reminds liberals that institutions exist for a reason, and they have stood the test of time because a lot of the things that they do is actually going very well. However, he also addresses the conservatives, reminding them that it is important that we have people who have new ideas, who try to change and innovate how we have been doing things so far. This is how progress is made. So on the one hand, as a liberal, you should realize that society works pretty well most of the time, and a lot of things are good in it. On the other hand, as a conservative, Jordan Peterson wants to remind you that the world changes. Things can't stay the same forever, and you better be ready to adapt to that. Now, I'm not gonna cover every single rule in this book, but if you're a Jordan Peterson fan, you will be pleased to hear that he talks about all his main topics. So the left versus the right, personal discipline, taking responsibility for your actions, relationships, how to be more successful, etc. And by the end of this video I'm gonna give you my favorite rule from this book, but generally I have to say that this book, compared to its predecessor, might even be better. And here's why. You see, 12 Rules for Life was an international bestseller, and rightfully so. There's a lot of really interesting ideas in here, but oftentimes Jordan Peterson has a hard time communicating them in a clear way. In my honest opinion, 12 Rules for Life was mainly such a big hit because of the persona of Jordan B. Peterson. All the scandals that he was involved in, blowing up with his own YouTube channel, and then going on interviews like the one with Cathy Newman and getting even more exposure through that. This made sure that 12 Rules for Life almost sold itself. Beyond Order, I believe, will sell as well or maybe even better than 12 Rules for Life, but I believe the reason for that will be that the rules are much more applicable to your everyday life. The book contains a lot of straightforward rules, like for example Rule 2, imagine who you could be and then aim single-mindedly at that. It's a great chapter, especially for readers in their 20s who are trying to figure out their path in life, and it gives very concrete advice on how you can go about that. Or then the rule after that, which is rule number 3. Work as hard as you possibly can on at least one thing and see what happens. Again, this rule is less scientific, less academic than a lot of the rules in the previous book, but that makes the thoughts of Jordan Peterson a lot more accessible. Clearly Jordan Peterson has a brilliant mind, but in the past he sometimes struggled communicating his thoughts and ideas in a way that you and I could understand and enjoy. And to me it seems like this is something that he worked on with this new book. He wants to share his thoughts with a wider audience, he wants to make it more comprehensible, and I think he succeeded with that. And another thing that I really enjoyed is that he put more of his background as a clinical psychologist into it. So for example in chapter 4, do not hide things in the fog, or in chapter 9, If old memories still make you cry, write them down carefully and completely. He goes deep into how to overcome past trauma, how to deal with memories that are still bugging you to this day and hold you back, and how you can benefit from that in the future. And again, it's very hands-on, very practical advice that I believe a lot of people will benefit from. Obviously, he's still Jordan Peterson though, so he still has these segments in the book that sometimes are a bit hard to follow. But then again, you want that from him, right? You don't want him to give you the rah-rah, hippy-dippy self-help advice that you can get from countless other people. Instead, this guy has decades of experience working with clients, applying his academic knowledge, and helping tens of thousands of people. So I for one really value when Jordan Peterson goes into depth with some of the topics, and I even challenge myself to really try to understand what he's trying to say at its core here. Now, I promised that I would also give you my favorite rule from the book, and that is rule 8. Try to make one room in your house as beautiful as possible. One of the things that Jordan Peterson initially got famous with is his advice to first clean up your room before you try to attempt anything else. And he got a lot of heat and criticism for that, but I believe it makes sense. You have to have things in order at home first before you attempt bigger and more complex things. So in his new book, he has this chapter called Try to Make One Room in Your House as Beautiful as Possible. And I sort of see that as a sequel to the clean up your room advice. Because you need to have order and tidiness first before you can even think about beauty and creativity. And I really enjoyed getting Jordan Peterson's thoughts on beauty because he gets almost philosophical about it. He talks about how anything beautiful essentially shows us how the world could be, but isn't. So having something beautiful in your house, one room that you make beautiful, maybe you put a beautiful piece of art on the wall, should really motivate you. Something that shows you what can be attainable if you work for it. At the same time, Jordan Peterson says that beauty can almost be scary. It can be intimidating, and it can show us all the imperfections in us and in our world around us. I found that a really interesting way of looking at beauty in the world and the purpose that beauty serves to all of us. Also, I just found it really cool to see a guy who's as logical and disciplined as Jordan Peterson to talk about something as illogical and sometimes incomprehensible as beauty. So my final verdict on this book is that it is well worth your time and money. I think it will be less controversial, but don't think that that makes it less enjoyable. If anything, it makes it more enjoyable to dig through it, and there were countless nuggets of knowledge that I picked up along the way. I would of course be curious to hear your opinion on this book as well. How did you like it? How did it compare for you to its predecessors? And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to subscribe so you get more videos like this one in the future. Thank you for watching, I hope it was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.